sometimes when you're trying to film and your dog wants some attention. Hey gosh, what's this? What's this? What's this? Hey. Welcome back to a slightly different episode of Low Carbon Lifestyle. My wife Esther would be first to tell you that I'm not the best with what she calls matters of the heart. She's sometimes amazed that all is going on in my tiny brain is, ooh, it's windy today. I wonder what the carbon intensity of the grid is. Or, ooh, look at that roof. That looks really good for solar panels. But when my friend Jeremy got in touch to see if I would be willing to talk about a thing called eco-anxiety with him on this YouTube channel, I thought, yeah, great. That is something that would be really good to hear about. Jeremy helpfully talks through what eco-anxiety might look like, how it might drive action, but also how it might be something that more and more of us come to experience over the next few years. I'm sure my language around mental health in this conversation is miles away from where it needs to be. So, before we start, I'm sorry, please bear with me. But I'm really pleased to share this chat with you. First of all, because Jeremy is great, but also because for all of us, particularly blokes, it's good to talk, isn't it? I hope you get something from this conversation. Hello, my name is Tom, and this is a little series about a low carbon lifestyle. Okay, so, hi Jeremy, welcome to the Low Carbon Lifestyle YouTube channel. It's great to see you.
Oh, thank you for having me. Yeah.
And where are you this afternoon? You're down in Surrey kind of area, I think.
Yeah, down in Surrey now, Walton-on-Thames.
Well, I'm coming at you from Durham in the northeast, so we've got the whole country involved. This is good. So yeah, Jeremy and I met, a little introduction for the YouTube. We met a couple of years ago. I think it was probably October 2018, that kind of time. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, I think in London somewhere,
In
yeah.
London, yeah. So we were both on a Christians on the Left leadership mentoring program. We've got to know each other a little bit through that, and we've connected since then as well on issues around climate activism, and we'll talk a little bit about what Jeremy's experience has been. So yeah, tell us a little bit about your background, Jeremy. Where do you come from, and what perspective do you come from for this this climate story?
In terms of like my background in climate, I suppose I think I first got into the issue when I went on holiday to the Swiss Alps, and I'd seen this massive glacier, and I saw a painting of what it was like about 150 years ago, and then comparing it to what it looked like now and how much the glacier had receded. I thought, wow, you can just see such a dramatic impact on the landscape. And
sure, yeah,
I was so amazed. I did a painting of it afterwards that's in the living room, and I think that was a key moment in my journey into climate change. And yeah, then I did environmental science degree. I went into the world of local government after that, and then returned to education with a master's in climate change.
Right, amazing. I think those kind of moments where we realise that the world has changed. So seeing that glacier and seeing what it might have been at some point, they're so significant in understanding the slow nature of the climate crisis, but also how much has changed. I've not necessarily had a similar experience like that, but I can imagine that would be really, really compelling. I think Theresa May, the old Prime Minister, talks about visiting the same valley or glacier or resort each year and seeing a glacier retreat year on year over the last 30 years. And that's what drove her kind of climate conscience.
So it's not just over decades then, seeing it within years.
I think
how fast it's going.
I think her perspective was probably over decades as well, visiting the same place. But yeah, noticing a kind of a corner in the valley or a rock and thinking, oh, that's different to what it used to be. Why is the ice not there anymore? It's kind of interesting, isn't it? We're kind of inundated all the time with news stories about climate chaos, whether it's wildfire or extreme weather, or like a couple of weeks ago was the Gulf Stream changing direction or being less strong, and then ice retreating, etc. Or then you might see images like the climate stripes that I've done a YouTube video on, or the climate spirals. How does that kind of stuff make you feel when you see those kind of those images, those news stories? What does that make you feel?
a real mixture of emotions. 'Cause sometimes you get news articles about things like the Gulf Stream, and with given that I've been in the climate space for quite a while, sometimes you just get desensitized
Sure.
by
Yeah.
it all. But other times it's the opposite. It's you feel something really strong, like often it's adrenaline, or it triggers the fight or flight system in your brain,
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
where that you get the blood pumping, and it might be difficult to sleep. And yeah, I might talk about this a bit more later, but like, yeah, and when we had those really hot summers recently, you get the effect of not sleeping from just the temperature, and then you get the anxiety about what's causing these crazy temperatures of 38 degrees or something.
Oh,
Not
yeah.
sure if it got that hot in Durham, but
It
yeah,
did.
down in Surrey it was something like that.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things about the northeast is we're going to avoid those extremes of temperature. I think the hottest it's been in Durham is like 21 degrees, which is a lovely summer's day. I a couple of summers ago I was in London during one of those heat waves, and to walk out of a building into 30 plus degrees in a place that you know when you've been to visit is so strange. When you know it's not normal like that, and then with all the buildings and the concrete everywhere in London, then it really can get overwhelming, can't it? And that's kind of frightening. Yeah, I like to think about rather than kind of focusing on those fight or flight emotions. My focus has been on, right, let's tell a positive story of what we could achieve through climate. I heard Jonathan Porritt, the environmentalist, speak a couple of years ago, and he said that he'd been banging the drum of disaster for so long and no one had listened, and he's tried to kind of switch to a hopeful message to say, look what we could build. And I'm kind of reminded of that beautiful, I'll put an image up in this video of the cartoon of the climate summit, where someone's asking the question, what if it's a big hoax and we create a better world for nothing? And there's a list of all the things we could achieve.
Yeah, my favorite one, I think.
Yeah, and it's like, yeah, we can do this positive thing to see change, and that's the world that I kind of sit in, is like, let's paint this positive picture. But I'm really conscious as well that there's the other side to it, which is like you said, the stress and the fight or flight of that is the climate disaster and news about it. So yeah, tell us a little bit more.
Yeah. I looked into that in my master's, and
Okay.
with one of the lecturers who was a neuroscientist, saying that's these some of the bad news stories, that the constant barrage can be counterproductive. And
Sure.
Yeah, so things like Jonathan Porritt's book, I think, got a lot of potential, because in my studies I looked at when those kind of fear appeals can work with situations like smoking and drink driving, when there's a clear solution, which is don't drink and drive, and try and smoke a bit less. But with climate crisis, when you trigger the fear response, you're not quite sure what to do about it. Do you send an email to your MP? Is that enough? Or do you have to go and sit down in the road and outside Parliament and block the traffic?
And one of the things about the kind of long-term activism of sending an email to an MP is we don't see change like straight away. So and even we were talking about, just before we started recording, planting trees. You don't see the impacts that planting a tree can have even in a year's time. It's so slow. So we don't have this more immediate feedback loops that other warnings might provoke in us. And we can feel completely out of control, I think, with this. And that can be very frightening, I think, that not understanding. And I've found this a little bit as well in the past, where trying to the noise that is climate activism and trying to communicate that to different people, and trying to say we're making lots of progress. Look at how we've decarbonised the electricity grid. Look at how we've cleaned up our vehicle emissions. Look at all this progress we're making. But then look at the graph of CO2 concentration in the atmosphere, and it's still going up, and it's still the highest this year than it ever will be, and it's still the highest next year than it was this before, more than this year, and that's really frightening and can cause so much fear, I guess is the word for me.
Yeah, and I think that's definitely that fear that Greta Thunberg communicates when she says, "I want you to panic and
Sure.
act as
Yeah.
if your house is on fire."
Yeah.
And eco anxiety is like that, and the problem comes if we try to just medicate the symptoms of eco anxiety without addressing the cause. It's like a fire alarm battery and just taking it out to stop the noise rather than
Sure.
going out and extinguishing the fire. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that analogy is trying to show that activism can be a productive way to respond to that energy, that anxiety, but it can't be something that's, you can't have that panic 24/7, and the body just can't deal with it. So we've got to
Sure.
move into times of rest and restoration, and also celebrating the successes and all the solutions that are out there as well.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So you use that phrase eco-anxiety, and I think it's something that we've talked about before, but it wasn't before. I think I've heard that phrase be used quite a few times in different circles, but it's not something that's part of my everyday vocabulary. So what is eco-anxiety? Could you kind of define eco-anxiety for me and for people watching?
Yeah, how I see it is it's a kind of fear or dread about something really bad happening in the future for the planet, and it manifests in different ways, in different physical and emotional symptoms, and not just about climate change, but about biodiversity loss and the state of the oceans as well.
Yeah, yeah. And then there's the fear of a potential water crisis in the future and a potential drought and lack of food and all that kind of stuff. You can imagine how that would be a really frightening and that anxiety inducing thing. So I mean, if you want to, I don't know if you've got any experience you can share of how you've had of how eco anxiety has affected you, and then what that's led to.
Yeah, I think it mainly started the same year we met. Wasn't due to meeting you, but it was triggered by, I think, the Beast from the East. We had
Sure. Yeah.
Beast from the East too a few weeks ago. That really extreme cold weather from, I think, Siberia, and but what was strange was how uh, um, the Arctic, like the North Pole, was even warmer than London for a
Right.
few weeks
Right.
or a few days, and where I lived at the time in Ipswich, the part of the tidal water had frozen over, and I thought, this is
Wow.
crazy. There's something
Yeah.
really strange here, and then soon after I watched the documentary Before the Floods with Leonardo DiCaprio, and he went to meet Pope Francis, who at the time was really, it was still is really a big campaigner of the climate, and just meeting all the victims of the crisis, meeting hurricane victims. It, I just had this feeling of anger that I'd never felt before, so much adrenaline, and thought, and I'd seen this graph that of just how little time we have to avoid those thresholds that the scientists were saying, and yeah, in my workplace, I took the decision to do a kind of act of conscience, and I kind of ran into it too quickly and based on my impulses, and it kind of led to a disciplinary process, and some regrets, because I really did like my colleagues. I didn't want to cause disruption to them. It was more trying to um, re resist the system, resist the system of fossil fuels we're depending on. And then after that, I think one of the things that helped was meeting other activists. So it didn't feel like I was on my own with the feelings, and with Extinction Rebellion particularly, that in that summer of 2018, I remember we were kind of sitting around in a circle, and a grief circle, just discuss a kind of heart to heart talk about what we felt about, like, mourning the loss of species, and mourning the future of the climate, but also after that we moves into more time of planning about what we could do about it, and at least just knowing there are other people out there who felt the same was helpful, I think. And then
Those
and then I moved
community
to,
moments could be really helpful and useful to put action, to have meaningful action, isn't it? Yeah. But I interrupted you. Sorry, go on.
oh yeah, I was just saying, and then afterwards I started the masters at King's College London, and I looked at climate change and the psychology of it from an academic angle, which I think helped me process it.
Well, yeah, amazing. So where have you got to then after that? That eco anxiety and that moment of real stress and real worry. What's that led to for you now, and what that might provoke in other people? Have you got any thoughts on that?
Well, one thing it led to was PhD application about how to process these difficult emotions, but not just through the conventional activism, but through creativity. I teamed up with some people at the university to start developing a comic book.
Amazing.
So a comic book about the climate crisis. Yeah, happen to have it here. So
there you go.
It's called Arctic Meltdown. Yeah, go to one of the first pages. So you've got this monster over here. It's called the methanol, and it breathes out huge quantities of methane gas from the Arctic in Canada. And methane is more powerful greenhouse gas than CO2. But if you see that one's just the baby one. So if you look over there, there's a kind of silhouette of an even bigger one, and the superheroes have to get together to work out how to stop it getting out. So it's got a kind of Godzilla feel to it.
Okay.
And
amazing. Yeah. And so I guess that's trying to communicate that actually there is a role for people to respond to the crisis and to do things there, and it's communicating it in a way that I would never have thought of, which is through a comic book. So I think that's fantastic. That's great.
Yeah. Well, what would add is So and my own journey with eco anxiety, it's kind of reflected a bit in the story of Arctic Meltdown. So what happens is, I won't give away big spoilers for what happens at the end, but to begin with, they meet up in a kind of group therapy called Apocophobia Anonymous. So people who have anxiety that the world's about to end due to climate change, and for the scientists, it's because she's seen that methane monster, and they all react in different ways. So Leon, who's on the back, he's full of anger, and he gets a drone to try and stop all the flights, so he leaps straight into activism without maybe not thinking through the consequences much, and then the others, they get one of the first flights out of the country to go to a survival bunker and kind of hide out for the last few, what they feel might be the last few days of their life. But then as you go on, you see that there might be another solution to that.
Yeah, and that's what we hope for, isn't it? That our activism will be a solution to this problem. Fantastic. So I think that's been really helpful for me to kind of understand that there is a reasonable fear that we can have about the climate crisis. That might cause something that we might call eco anxiety, but that might, through supporting other people, getting to know other activists, getting to know other people, might cause us to do significant things that can have a significant impact, whether it's activism, direct activism, or whether it's campaigning or research or communicating, etc. So I think that's really helpful.
I think just add that when a lot of the when you have the eco anxiety, I think sometimes it's feeling that we've got to get to that below that 1.5 degrees, and if it goes above 1.5 degrees, then it's like the apocalypse and everything's going to fall apart. But I think that it's much more nuanced than that, and even if it is too late to prevent that, there's there's still opportunities to save lives from if it gets to preventing it get to 2.3 degrees or whatever. And I think part of the comic book is looking at what does it mean to be a hero, and whatever happens, you act because, not just because of the outcome, but you act because it's the right thing, and that's part of what it means to growing courage.
Yeah, for sure. That's great. And I'm really conscious as well that these kind of targets we have to reduce emissions by X amount by 2030 or 2040 or 2050, it putting that deadline pushes us as a society to say, oh, it's 29 years away, 2050. There's plenty of time to sort that out. Whereas actually, if we brought it forward and said we need a ton reduced today is so much more valuable than a ton reduced in 2045. So all that work we can do more quickly and more more urgently is so important, isn't it? So yeah, if we can all become climate heroes, if we all become one of the renegades, then that would be a positive thing, definitely. Well, and I guess the comic's available in all good bookshops, so have a look at that online.
Yeah. Available on Amazon and a few other stores as well. So
great.
Yeah. And
fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, cheers, Jeremy.
Yeah.
Okay, I hope you got something useful out of that chat. If you got this far, then thank you. It was a long time. But here is some more thinking that you might want to look at. So first of all, my friend Hannah Malcolm on this podcast, Talking Theology from Cranmer Hall in Durham. She's an ordinand, so trained to be a vicar in Church of England, and also a PhD student. And she's got a book called Words for a Dying World. Have a look at both of them. Also, have a look at Jeremy's comic of climate chaos in The Renegades, which I'll link below. It looks like a lot of fun, or a lot of fear. And I'd love to hear whether you've experienced grief or anxiety or some other emotion when thinking about climate issues. If you have, I would love to chat all that through with you. I hope that's helpful, and I hope you got something useful out of it. Do get in touch if you want to talk things through. Thanks for watching. Please do like and share this video and subscribe to this channel. And I'll see you next time on Low Carbon Lifestyle.